This is Terry Garvin Sims, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. In just a few moments, we're going to be joined by former world-class USWA, FMW, and Global Wrestling Federation superstar Terry Garvin Sims. I think everybody will enjoy this interview. As he posted on our Facebook page, he really bared his soul in this interview. It's a lot of fun. Patrick, I know you were unable to attend. It was your birthday. Ironically, it was Terry's birthday as well. So that's kind of
interesting.
And
March 20th was his actual birthday?
Well, I believe so, and you share a birthday with somebody else in wrestling as well.
Yes, I do, the Icon Sting.
The Stinger. Obviously, yours is a few years sooner than the Stingers, but yeah, you share a birthday with two great wrestlers. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Because I remember a few years ago when Wikipedia was starting to become a thing, and I looked online to, match up my birthday. Said, what celebrities do I share a birthday with? And obviously the one that stood out was Sting. And I'm like, that's really cool. I share a birthday with one of my favorite wrestlers.
Very cool. Nobody's born on September 10th, so not that I'm aware of anyway.
Well, it's rather better to be born on the 10th than the 11th.
Yeah, no, that is one of the downers of my birthday is like, during my birthday, I feel the unnecessary need to go on Facebook and post something about September the 11th. And it's like, on your birthday, it should be your birthday. But I guess it's not as bad as being born on December 24th or 25th.
I actually know two people that were born on Christmas.
You know what sucks about that, though? They probably get combined Christmas birthday gifts, and they lose out on extra gifts.
I think one of my friends, what his family did, they would celebrate his birthday on the 23rd, so he would get extra gifts.
Cool.
And then on Christmas he would obviously get the Christmas gifts. So
that's that's a great idea, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell do you do if you're born on February 29th?
Celebrate it on March 1st?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, theoretically, you could be like 40, what would that be? Let me do some math. 48, and you could celebrate your 12th birthday? That'd be kind of cool.
Something like that, yeah.
All right. Well, anyway.
It's every 4 years, except on a century, it skips the 0. For some reason, there's never a leap year on 0.
Oh.
If that makes any sense. At the start of the century.
Really? I see. Now there you go. I didn't even know that. So there's
I don't know how accurate that is, but I remember hearing something like that.
Very good. Well, we are a wrestling show here, guys. We are kind of rambling a little bit, but this week's guest is Terry Sims, and we are going to play the interview in just a second. Most of the people know our format is basically kick off with the interview and then do our talking segment afterwards. I wanted to change it up just a little bit for this week, and that's because there's something going on that I really wanted to discuss. Our last show, we took a couple of months off, recharge our batteries, regroup, and frankly, I've been battling illness and then took a header at the park the other day, so I've been battling concussion-like symptoms for the past, 2 months religiously. I've been sick, then I've been smashing my head open. This is the first time that I think since Lex Luger that I've actually had my real voice to do a show, which is scary because that was done at the beginning of last football season. So
that's right, yeah.
I've been destroyed, man. So I'm just glad to have my real voice back. Anyway,
yeah, it's good to have us back. Good to be back doing this.
Absolutely. So since we last did a show, and the reason I'm going to tie this in with Terry Garvin Sims, he changed his name, by the way. He wrestled as Terry Garvin until about 1992 and changed it to Sims, partially because there was a sex scandal with the original Terry Garvin, who was a WWE agent at the time. So he wanted to have himself disassociated from that, and partially because his kids didn't get why he wasn't calling himself Sims, despite the fact that they were telling their friends that he's Terry Garvin. So, that kind of was the 2-for-1 special and why he did that. Anyway, back to the point. He had an amazing feud, and in my opinion, it might be the best thing that either guy did with Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, one of the greatest minds ever in wrestling. And for those who don't know enough about Eddie Gilbert, Take the time.
Paul Heyman learned from him, right?
Was that? Paul Heyman learned from him, absolutely. You can't not learn from him. You can watch him and learn about wrestling just by watching him. He was incredible. The guy just was, I mean, for God's sakes, if you watch his matches and don't see that he was a big influence on Eddie Guerrero, I mean,
God, yeah.
I mean, Jesus, the guy just, he oozed wrestling psychology out of his pores. And if he was
Which is something that we normally attribute to Jake Roberts, and it's absolutely true, but Eddie Gilbert, I'm getting tongue twisted, he doesn't always get the credit for that, but absolutely, you're right.
Partially is that, I'll tell you why, partially because he died so young.
Mm-hmm.
And and that was not by, unlike a lot of the other causes, it wasn't suicide, it wasn't anything like that. He had a heart condition, and when he'd get upset, you could even see it during his promos, he kind of turned cartoonish red as he was cutting his promo. You could just see it. There was like an unworking valve in his heart or something like that, and it ended up catching up with him. Truly a tragedy. He died the same day, and this is Terry Sims says this, the same day as Kerry Von Erich.
Holy shit.
Which, Kerry Von Erich was a couple years prior, but it's staggering. February the 18th. It's a bad day in wrestling history. Anyway, so in this feud with Terry Garvin and Eddie Gilbert would play every dirty trick in the book to win. And eventually Terry Garvin, much like Daniel Bryan, got the win, and he was kind of adopted in the Global Wrestling Federation as like the chosen babyface who they wanted to see succeed, who finally beat the guy who never loses, and it was really well done, and the crowd loved it. But when Eddie would cheat, you'd hear people that were grown women in the crowd screaming at him, "You cheater! Cheater!" You know, just really getting into it. Now, if you fast forward 20-plus years, we got Daniel Bryan now, who the Internet has adopted as their favorite son, and unlike...
Well, the whole WWE fan base has, quite honestly.
Now they have. Oh, well, the Internet always had him as their favorite son. You're absolutely right. Then CM Punk as well. And it just seems like for some reason he's captivated the entire WWE audience to where if they don't do what they're supposed to be doing with them, the crowd lets them know that. And it almost seems to me like right now the crowd is dictating the programming to some degree. And I'm not sure that's a good thing or bad thing. Don't get me wrong. If anybody's listening to this, I'm not saying Daniel Bryan shouldn't be the winner at WrestleMania and walk out with a world title. If he doesn't, in my opinion, it is just to screw with people. There is no logical reason he doesn't walk out of WrestleMania with the world title. But I'm not sure that it's the greatest thing for wrestling to have this kind of weird thing going on where the crowd is such a huge portion of the wrestling product. I mean, it was to some extent with ECW, but you always could say that was because it was a smaller crowd. It was a more intimate environment. Now you got arenas of, I won't say full arenas because most of them aren't, but about 10,000 people screaming and shouting, and they're all kind of the same mindset. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about it in the long term, and that's just something that's been kind of, as I watched Raw the past couple of months, going through my mind is, I'm not sure that this change where the smart fans, or smart marks, or whatever you want to call them, are kind of in the driver's seat is necessarily a good thing, and I would love to get your opinion on that.
It's very interesting. I think it's the residual effects of multiple things, and I think part of what you're, and I'm going to try and address this in points, but I think part of what your problem is that they're not allowing themselves to absorb the storyline. They just want their favorites to win. Is that what you're, like they want the guys that they've adopted and that they mark out for and they think are the quote-unquote best workers. They just want them to win, and that's all that matters to them, and they don't really absorb the storyline. And that's something that I've seen a few times over the last few years. I remember one example in TNA where they did the skit where Roxy got her head shaved.
Right.
Do you remember that, Roxy Laveau?
Absolutely.
And
former guest on the show.
Yeah.
It might have been 2 times as well. I'm not sure.
Yes, we have. We had her on twice, and she was very sweet, very lovely. But anyway, I remember when they did that segment, and I thought it came off great because you really feel bad for Roxy, and that was the birth of the Beautiful People too, where Velvet Sky and Angelina Love acted like total bitches, and I was like, what bitches they are. That's awesome. And the crowd, they were going into their Fire Russo chants because they didn't like that one of the girls that they respected got her head shaved, and it completely went over their head that it was a storyline and that they were trying to get heat on Angelina and Velvet, and they just couldn't accept the storyline that was unfolding in front of their eyes. And that's something that gets on my nerves from time to time. If everything doesn't play out exactly the way they want it to, they get upset. And, you know, stories need to be a little bit more interesting than, and yes, wrestling is a work. Yes, it is fake and scripted or whatever word you want to use, but you have to accept the storyline that you're being given. But there's also this other side of it where the WWE for so long, they placated the kiddies and always had the good guys win, and Cena won all the time, and this, that, and the other. So when the new guys that we pick as our favorites don't win, or at least when they don't win right away, they get pissed off. And Daniel Bryan, you know, they did that great bit at SummerSlam where he won the title and got screwed, but then he just got screwed 6 more times, and after a while you just get frustrated. It's just like, well, what the hell is going on? So it's probably the result of multiple different things all coming together at once, like bad writing and some smart fans just not willing to accept it, you know, not willing to accept the storyline. That said, the wrestling fans have always picked their favorites. That is something that's been a standard in wrestling. That predates the internet. The wrestling fans always pick their favorites, and the promoters would adjust accordingly based on who the popular guys. So what?
I mean, to this degree, though, do you think it's been picking their favorites? Like, I revert back to and
they picked Austin.
Yeah, you got me there. I mean, they did pick Austin.
Absolutely. I mean, they picked and they booed the shit out of Rocky Maivia. And that told the WWE, oh, well, we got to change stuff with this guy. And they presented him in a way that they would cheer. So that was what I would call a great compromise.
I mean, oh, my God.
Exactly. So, yeah, you always have to, I mean, don't, like, force feed us Bautista when clearly nobody wants Bautista.
Yeah.
I mean, my God. Did anybody want Bautista to come back at all?
And that's what's strange about the internet, though. And I'm going to say this, and I know I make a lot of Hogan references, but the same people who will online write, I don't want to see Bautista, will say, and Hogan's taking up time that a young guy could be using to have a shitty match that we'll chant and do Fandango songs over. And he's taking up their time, and blah, 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 blah. The same people. Yet when Bautista came out to the ring, the crowd turned him heel because you couldn't ignore it anymore. But when Hogan comes out to the ring, there's like no boos. It's just 100% cheer. Why is that? That's a whole different topic. But I never understood why the internet could be so anti-Hogan, yet you don't hear that when he comes to the ring. I've never followed that logic.
Sometimes you do, but you're right. It was never to a huge degree, except for WCW in 1995, when people were just kind of getting sick of the act. But yeah, you're right. He's never really had any kind of a huge mark backlash against him, which I don't have an explanation for that, quite honestly, because there are certain towns, like I remember when Bound for Glory was in Philly, and I'm like, oh, they're going to boo the shit out of Hogan. They're just going to shit all over that match, and they didn't. So
they nostalgia. I mean, I don't know if it's a nostalgia thing or what, but they don't allow themselves to really disrespect him, and that's kind of cool.
Well, had Bautista, did he ever earn what Hulk Hogan earned in this business? I mean, yeah.
No way.
I mean, granted, I'm going to go see his movie later this year because Guardians of the Galaxy looks pretty sweet, but I don't really care about Bautista other than that.
Well, yeah.
And even then, he's going to get upstaged by a smaller guy.
True. That's true. No,
Rocky soon, man.
The truth about it, though, if you really think about it, is I think people were offended by Bautista because he got the push and people accepted him, and then he got hurt, and then he's like, ever since he got hurt, he didn't seem to give a damn, and they resented that. And then there was also the fact that if you read his book, he doesn't come off as a likable guy. And I don't know how much of the internet, of the people who boo him read the book, but the guy
probably not many, but
well, if you look at the bios, I mean, I don't think it sold that many copies. It sold a good amount of copies, but not that many. Certainly not to the full arena standards. But anyway, in the book, he admits that while his wife was battling cancer and going through chemotherapy, he was screwing anything with two legs, including and up to Melina. And it's like...
Well, I think everybody boned Melina at one point or another.
Apparently, all you had to do was ask.
Yep.
Wow.
Hey, does that shock you?
What, that he did it?
Oh, no, that she was that easy.
No, but I don't know. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I can't do nothing about it now, and because I'm married, and quite honestly, I don't think you should do anything about it now, because if everybody has had her, you don't know what you might catch.
Exactly. Feel bad for Morrison, because it sounds like that was the end of his career right there.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. You got to be careful. Women are the root of all evil. Money, people say money is. It's not. It's women. But this is the truth. Ready?
Yo.
God made woman out of a rib from Adam. He made Eve out of a rib from Adam. And women have been a pain in man's side ever since. Anyway, but that was my complaint and my concern, is that have we lost something in translation where the wrestlers are telling the story to where now the fans decided, okay, I'm the star of the show and I'm going to decide who is it. This is now my big video game and I'm going to decide who's playing. It just seems to me like there's entirely too much control on the crowd, and the crowd has become way too big of a part of telling the stories in a negative way, in a way that the wrestlers don't have to tell the stories anymore. The wrestling fans decide what the stories are, and then the wrestlers play them out. And that scares me. Because
it could, except for the fact that the WWE's writing from time to time has been so bad that you really almost can't blame the fans for getting pissed off. It's like, no, this is what we want, blah blah blah. And I go back to that Raw in Chicago a couple weeks ago. They were talking about hijack Raw, and they were going to do this and this and this, and just completely ruin the show. And no, I mean, they will cheer for the guys that they like. They like the Usos. They cheered when the Usos won the tag titles. They like the Shield. They like the Wyatts. They chanted, "This is awesome" at that. I mean, who didn't want that? And that was something that was created completely by WWE Creative. That was something that they came up with to build up two really strong, badass three-man factions and put them together, and the fans reacted to it. They chanted, "This is awesome" before they even touched each other. So if the writing is good and the creative is there, the fans will probably go along with it. I mean, you always have those snarky assholes like the ones that chant Husky Harris at Bray Wyatt, which I just kind of look at that and go, okay, congratulations. He played a different character. Good for you. It's fake. Could you not do that? Because that's annoying.
Yeah, that's at this point, isn't that like chanting Isaac Yankem McCain? I mean,
exactly.
Get over it.
Yeah, I mean, I love it whenever people say, well, wrestling's fake, right? I'm like, yeah, so is Game of Thrones, so is Walking Dead, so is House of Cards, so is every other show on television right now. It should still be well written and entertaining. I'm willing to accept Robert Downey Jr. in another movie and also watch Iron Man and just accept that that's the same actor playing two separate characters. I don't know why wrestling can't get that same recognition.
Well, because people have this snarky attitude towards it, and I don't know why. I don't know why that is, but my wife runs a Joe Montana tribute page, and every single day she comes to me and says, I'm getting annoyed because not only do they think I'm him, which I at no point say that I am. It's called a fan site, right? Mm-hmm. But they address him as the character he plays on Criminal Minds, which is Rossi. And it's like, don't these people realize it's a story? And I said, no. But these same people who will call these people, these actors, by their character names on a show, will scream you down if you say that you're a wrestling fan. Wrestling's fake. And it's there's no logic or rhyme or reason to it. It's something that I've come to expect and understand, kind of expect, and I don't think it's a good thing, but it is a thing.
Well, actually, a friend of mine had a great line last night. We went out for my birthday and had drinks and stuff like that. We were sitting at the bar talking about this shit, and we were talking about how some people, they find out you're a wrestling fan. He's like, that shit's fake, right? He's like, I had one guy tell me that. Like, wrestling is lowbrow and fake, right? And this was while he was watching reality TV. And it's like, really? Okay, sure. Quote unquote reality TV.
Exactly. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, so we should probably get to our Terry Sims interview. We go almost an hour with the guy, and really nice guy, and a strange story about how I came to find Terry Sims. We had a guy who was pretending to be him on our Facebook page, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was strange because I friended him, and I asked him a couple of questions, but the answers I got, a couple of them were a little wonky. It was like, oh, well, what he responded to a couple of my posts on my personal page, like, oh, Coco Beware would have gone further if he wasn't gay. And this was the fake one. And my first
Is he
thought
gay?
was, no, he's not gay. He was married. His wife just recently passed away, and he's got a couple of kids, so he's not gay. And it's like, so I sent him a message saying, hey, I don't know how he appeared backstage, but he's not actually gay. So anyway, I kind of was with my red flags, and then a couple of weeks later, I got a message in from the actual Terry Sims who says, hey, I see you're posting global screenshots. Do you mind if I use a couple for my personal page? And my thing is like, well, wait a minute. Who the hell have I been talking to then? So long story short, we sorted it all out. We got him on the phone, and this is the real Terry Sims, and it's a really good interview. And like I said, if you've not done so, check out ESPN Classic. Unfortunately, right now they're stuck in that horrible late era time when there's a whole lot of nothing going on Global. But if you stick through it, and if they go back around and start showing the 1991 stuff and 1992 stuff, Terry Sims was a big part of that product. And his feud with Eddie Gilbert was one of the best things Global ever did. And I think that people really, that didn't check it out, needs to really check that out, because it was a great time for a great product. And unfortunately, it fell apart as quickly as it came together. But hope everybody enjoys the interview with Terry Sims, and we'll be back right after the interview just to discuss a little bit about WrestleMania. Now, we're 2 weeks out, and we don't have the full card yet, so that's a little scary to me. But we'll be back to discuss that in just a few moments.
All right, later.
This is Doyle King, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
Yo, maniacs, this is Hulk Hogan, the greatest of all time, and you're listening to The Blaze. So what you gonna do when Hulk Hogan in Blaze of Mania runs wild on you?
Trying to find a way out of it. Gets up to his hands, pulls Garvin over. Count of one. Reversal by Gilbert. Garvin gets the predicament. Out of three. Terry Garvin has defeated Eddie Gilbert. 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. Garvin has beaten Eddie Gilbert.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the match, Terry Garvin.
We're going to go down and talk.
And welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. And on the Newsmaker line with us right now is a gentleman who I am honored to have on the show after speaking to a imposter at one point of his on Facebook. And now I got the real thing on our radio show, the one and only Terry Sims, formerly Terry Garvin. Terry, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's an awesome treat to have you on the show. We've been doing this show a long time, and you know what? I'm one of those guys who, I'm 32 now, and I grew up, in all honesty, rushing home from school to get home and watch Global Wrestling, because that was like the greatest gift a wrestling kid, a wrestling fan could have ever had, was daytime wrestling right after school. So I distinctly remember having my hand on the doorknob of school waiting for the bell to ring so I can rush home and watch it. And you were one of the major reasons, because you were one of the major stars there in Global. So
Thanks,
again,
buddy.
can't thank you enough for having
that.
me on.
I appreciate that. It's kind of funny you said that, because the show was on, I believe it was 4 o'clock Eastern time.
Exactly.
And I lived in Dallas, and my kids were in Kentucky, unfortunately. It was one of the biggest regrets of my life, is not having them with me. And they rushed home from school, or at least my son did. My daughter didn't care a whole lot about seeing Dad get beat up, but he would rush home, too. You're actually same age as my son, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Great honor.
51 tomorrow.
So you started young.
Yeah, I did. I started real young.
I'm 32 and I got a 12-year-old son, so probably about the same age differential there. So I'm with you on that.
No, actually, I have a daughter that's even older. I started very young.
There you go. All right. Well, like I said, it's an honor to have you on the show, and I guess I have to talk to you, starting out with, we'd like to do a little bit of fact-checking, and one of the facts that has been posted online about you that I wanted to discuss is that, mentioned as fact, is that you used to be a hairdresser. Is there any truth to that fact that has been spread on the Internet as being the truth?
Absolutely, it is the truth. It was part of the gimmick to Beauty and the Beast. When I was young, as I was discussing with you, I had a child at a very young age. In fact, I had two at a really young age. I was a baby having babies, and the truth of the matter is that I had to, forego my education. Because of that, I got married at a really young age, and I saw a movie when I was growing up called Shampoo with Warren Beatty, where he was a hairdresser in Beverly Hills doing all these rich ladies' hair, and they all wanted him. And I thought, I was like 11, 12 when I saw the movie, and I thought, man, he's living life I was born to live. And my ex-wife, my children's mother, actually wanted to be a hairdresser also. So I went to hair school and became a hairdresser and was somewhat pretty successful, I guess you could say, because when I was living in Memphis, I not only had my own salons, but I did a lot of country music stars' hair.
Really?
And yeah.
And this is back when they had the big hair, because this was back in the 80s, so everybody had...
Right. This was like 84 through 89.
Okay.
Late 88 when I moved to Dallas. But, yeah, I was really doing well with it. Somewhat regret that I left the Memphis territory, but I don't, because, Dallas was very, very good to me. And it's like a second home. I just made a trip back there for a wrestling reunion. It's called Shootout, Red Bastine Shootout, and saw a lot of the old gang. And it's the first time I'd made a trip back in quite a while. So
How long ago was this, the reunion?
I'm sorry?
How long was the shootout? How long ago was the shootout?
It was just, how long ago?
Yes.
It was in February. It was the 13th of February.
Oh, okay, cool. That explains it. I got a couple of messages from some guys from Global who I've had on over the years, and they said, hey, I just wanted to tell you I met up with so-and-so and so-and-so, and it was all around that time. So that kind of clears it up to me as to where this all took place.
I'm sorry, it's actually February the 8th. Yeah, it was, it's something that Red Bastine started. In fact, I went to one of the first ones back in the late 80s, like 89 or so. Mm-hmm. The only current guys were wrestling at that shootout were myself and a guy called the Angel of Death, or Dave Sheldon.
Right.
He and I went, and it was pretty amazing because Killer Carl Cox was there.
Yeah.
Johnny Valentine.
Wow.
Some of the real, people that I'd always looked up to. Danny Hodge was there.
Oh.
Red Bastine, of course, and all I could do was sit and listen to stories. I mean, they were great.
Absolutely, and that's kind
of
why I started.
Because this year I was up talking and telling stories, and the younger wrestlers were listening to what I had to say, and I think this is one of the bigger turnouts that they had to this reunion, and I was really pleased to see everyone, and just to get back to my old stomping ground. I lived there quite a while.
Yeah, I had heard that there was a lot of the old world-class and Global gang that was there. In fact, one of the guys who contacted me was Doyle King, who said he met up with the later owner of Global, Gray Peters, Trey Peterson, and he met up with him, and he was talking about doing something with the footage of the old shows, other than what the ESPN Classic is currently doing with those shows. So,
well, I don't think that Gray owns a lot of the global shows. If he does, they have to be older ones. I know that ESPN has most of the footage. A guy by the name of Max Andrews Productions did all the filming for that and was, kind of driving force behind it for years. He's a guy that in later years, World Class did the syndication, all the filming, was a partner, TV partner for World Class, and then later even USWA. He was also, for a time there, a little bit of driving force behind Global, but he always did the TV for it,
Yeah.
And I was just pleased as could be, to be a part of all that. But the shootout was great. There were some people that I looked up to there. Stan Hansen was there.
Wow, and, how's he doing, by the way? I know he had a health scare recently.
He seemed like he was doing great. What little bit I talked to him, which I regret not getting to spend a little more time with Stan. He sounded great. He looks good. He looks like he could still go 30 minutes or an hour Broadway if needed to be, but Stan never did any Broadways, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Some of his work in Japan was just absolutely phenomenal. Bam Bam Gordy and a lot of Americans went over there and really did great. And today when I watch wrestling, I watch a lot of that old Japanese stuff.
Oh, yeah. That's what I have. It seems kind of redundant with the advent of the WWE Network, but I have literally in the office floor-to-ceiling shelving of nothing but wrestling DVDs and videotapes and all in alphabetical order, and a lot of it is just a lot of the guys in Japan because they tore down when they went there. They were serious. They were sincere, strong-style matches, and they were something to see.
Right. A good friend of mine that I talk to almost every day online and sometimes on the phone, quite a bit on the phone, is Joel Deaton, Joel Jones. And he made just tons of trips to Japan.
In fact, you just hung out with him, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct?
No, we were actually playing a little poker online together.
Oh, cool.
We do that quite a bit these days. But Joe and I, he's a brother. I mean, the guy's a great guy. Straight shooter, just flat tell you, kind of like me. Anything you want to know, he'll tell you,
Very
and
cool.
even it's on himself, and I do the same,
Very cool. Well, let me ask you a little bit about the advent of Global, because I know there was the USWA, and that was on as well, and then it became the Global Wrestling Federation as we later knew it. And you were instrumental in Dallas, not just as that, but you were also working for Gary Hart in another promotion, I want to say, prior to your joining Global in the USWA. What was involved?
I actually came in for World Class.
You came in for World Class, right, exactly.
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast came in for World Class, and we were the World Class Tag Team Champions. And that was... We became tag team champions in early, I want to say, 89.
89, yeah, sounds about right.
We came in a little before that, had a pretty good run there that got cut short. And then I left for a little bit and went to Alabama for probably
Continental.
5-6 months, I don't know, and did an angle with Adrian Street where it was something that I owed to him. I left Memphis when we were really getting a big push, and they brought Adrian to tag up with Bill Dundee, and we were main events in the road shows and semi-mains of Memphis, most matches, you know.
Right.
Well, I left right as it started getting a little hot and came to Dallas because a Samoan SWAT team was there, and they left to go to the NWA or WCW, and they wanted us to come and fill that spot, so we did. And I really felt bad because I liked Adrian. He used to stay at my house when he lived in Memphis. I had a home in Brentwood, out just south of Memphis. I lived in Nashville. Had a house just south of Nashville in Brentwood, and he used to stay with me, he and Ms. Linda. And I felt like I really owed him something for, you know, making him come up there, leave his spot that he had. And I went and kind of, you know, did a favor for him. But in the process, I had some knee problems. And when it was time that I needed my knee worked on, I did the job and got out of there and came back to Dallas. And they wanted me to work, but, you know, like I said, I had the knee problem, so I suggested that maybe I do some commentary. And I did that for quite a while until I healed. That was like my second knee surgery. And then Lawler and I teamed up. By this time, it had become USWA.
Right.
Okay. And then I went back and forth between Texas and Memphis, and it just got to be too much doing both. So I came back to Texas, and at that time, I wasn't real happy about the way I was being used because they wanted me to go back and forth, you know. So there was a fledgling group that had opened in Dallas. It was called Texas Championship Wrestling for the Metroplex. You know, they wanted to start a wrestling promotion. They had contacted me. They had a bar. It was this big, huge building, and they had a bar in the corner. And they contacted me to do some events in there for promotional to get people in this bar, and I did. And they told me about wanting to do a wrestling show and explained to me what they wanted to do, the kind of money behind it. I asked if I'd be interested in heading it up. Well, I didn't have the TV knowledge at that time to really do it. I didn't have the contacts, the people that could shoot the show or anything like that. So I got in touch with Gary Hart, and he came in and put it together. For some reason, at this time, you know, I'd been heel the whole time with long hair. And Gary brought in a great production crew. He brought Bill Mercer back to do the commentary from the old World Class days. Mickey Grant, who's the innovator of the World Class shows as far as how it was shot in the early 80s when the Freebirds and the Von Erichs and all that went on. And Gary came in, and we did about 6 months' worth of really good tapes, I thought. But that's when I cut my hair and changed babyface.
Right.
And, okay, then when that folded, I went back to USWA and didn't like, again, how I was being used, so it ended, and Global started soon thereafter because of the fallout between Jarrett and Kerry Von Erich. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And
not much has been said about that. What was the fallout? Was it just business, or?
Jarrett bought into the company, but he didn't buy the whole company. Kerry and Kev were supposed to be getting checks, you know, whether they wrestled or not. They were supposed to be getting part of the promotion, and they didn't feel like they were getting a fair part of the promotion. So Kev, at that time, Kerry, I believe, had gone to the WWF.
Yeah, he was pretty early in 1990. It wasn't long into 1990 that he.
Okay. Well, that's when he did, and Kev, you know, didn't feel like he was getting his fair share, wasn't happy, didn't want to do the show. which I don't blame him. You got to do what's right for you in this business. And that was what was right for Kevin. And when the lawsuit was filed, Jerry Jarrett basically just picked up and went back to Memphis. I think that they hot-shot the territory with Eric Embry, and changing it from world class to USWA wasn't really a good idea. They were bringing in a lot of talent, but they weren't doing things the way that the world class fans were used to doing. When you don't have Von Erichs there fighting, it's not going to draw. And it's not going to draw like it is unless you do something really phenomenal and have guys beating the snot out of each other, okay?
Yeah.
And they weren't. He was trying to run Memphis and Dallas, and I just didn't really get over,
Yeah.
Well, so when he left and went back, then you had Global come in.
Okay.
That was part of Joe Pedicino. I don't know if you know the whole story about that, and I don't want to get into all of it, but there was supposed to be a ton of money behind it. And
it had something to do with a foreign financial backer. I can't remember even what country it was, but we did talk about it recently. Yeah,
that's correct.
With the old Stephen Prazak, and I discussed that in great detail fairly recently, back in November. So that was covered. Yeah, we do know what you mean.
Okay. Well, anyway, he found someone else to back the show, and of course, it was sold to ESPN, I think, through Max Andrews' production, because Max, would go to the NAPD convention every year, and if he had something to push, it would do well. And ESPN at that time was still new and wanting to get into the wrestling end, okay?
Right.
I was lucky enough to get a call to come in. Bill Eadie was the original booker.
Right, and I feel so stupid because I only glanced upon it when we had Bill Eadie on the show. We actually helped him get a couple of bookings a few years ago, and he came on our show, and we only just briefly talked about his time in Global. I know it wasn't long, but his time and Eddie Gilbert's time is probably the highest of the high and the most memorable time in the history of Global.
Well, I would like to think so. I really would. I kind of think that after Eddie left, it really started going down. They had the ESPN money, but unfortunately, I believe that Max was making the biggest part of that. I think the deal that they had cut was that. Now, I could be wrong on this. I could be totally wrong on this, but I don't think that I am, because I don't think that Joe Pedicino would have pulled out, after Eddie left, if it wasn't for that in particular. If he would have had a piece of that ESPN money, then it would have been fine. But
I got to ask you a lot about Eddie Gilbert, because in all honesty, when you were first working for Global, they had you doing some good things, but then they'd have you lose pretty convincingly to, say, the Lightning Kid. And it was pretty strange, because you kind of seemed like you were, I don't want to say above that, but above that. And then when Eddie Gilbert came in, they really gave you the push towards the singles push that you probably had always wanted, and you really made the most of it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
What did you think of your I know we talked in great detail. In fact, how you and I kind of came into contact with one another was I posted the 2 out of 3 falls match with yourself and Eddie, where he burnt you with the fireball. I guess my question for you is, how was it working with Eddie both in the ring and as the mind that we've later come to know him to be?
Well, I knew that Eddie was a great mind, from my Memphis days. And we never worked together like regularly in Memphis. We always seemed to be in different territories, different times. You know, he booked Continental and different places, and I worked at those places, but I never was there when he was there, and I worked some shows up in Memphis, Betty, but they were spot shows, you know. He wasn't coming into the territories like when they were bringing him in to get a house up or something. And he saw that the Dallas fans, you know, I never really thought of myself as a superstar or anything. I thought that I was a person who would go into the ring and give it my all, give it the best match I could. Eddie saw that the fans really were getting with me. He knew my work somewhat from working against Lawler and working against Dundee and people like that. He'd seen my work. So, you know, he wanted to do a program with me, and I was honored to do it. And the fans really were behind me. You know, whether I lost or whether I won, they appreciated the fact that I, you know, gave it my all each time I went to the ring. And that's what Dallas wrestling was all about. They would boo you or cheer you whether you won or lost. Okay? It's just if you went in there and you gave an all-out effort and fought and made it look like you were really killing somebody or being killed, they liked it.
Right.
And Eddie and I clicked. We were the same size. You know, I'm 5'10", 220, 225, up to 230, 235 at times. And we were kind of a good match, you know. We had good matches. We went 60-minute Broadways. We went 2 out of 3 falls, which, you know, by the time it started till the time it ended, you're not seeing all of it on the global, you know, show because of breaks and what they edited out. But that probably went 45 minutes.
And you told me once on the phone, in one of our previous conversations, that you lost a considerable amount of weight in one match.
Yeah,
with Eddie.
That 60-minute Broadway, it was like August or September, and as you know, that Sportatorium ring, that building was a tin building with a tin roof, and Texas gets hot that time of year.
Oh, yeah.
And they really didn't have a modern air conditioning system. They had a little bit of a, I guess you could call it a fan system. It was an old water drip down and then fans blowing the cool air.
Yeah, here in Arizona we call that a swamp system, and it doesn't really do much.
Yeah. Well, with the TV lights in the ring and all, and, you know, lights above the ring to light it up, if it was 95 degrees outside, it'd be 120, 110, 120 in the ring.
Right.
And we went out there and we did that 60-minute Broadway in one of those 110-degree weather, you know, in the ring. It was 110 degrees. And we lost between 10 and 15 pounds during that match because, you know, we would just go back and forth fighting, and we, of course, take breaks, you know, like you'd have to in a Broadway match like that. But, man, when we got out of the ring, we were both just, you know. It was, in fact, I remember back one of the Pro Wrestling Illustrators or something like that, they commented on it a couple of times, you know, and called it a possible match of the year or something like that. And Eddie was a great mind, okay, and a good friend. So was Doug, who was the Dark Patriot. I think everyone knows that.
Exactly right.
You know, I still talk to Doug on Facebook, and he's a great guy. super guy, still working, by the way.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, but little thing to tell you, when Eddie passed, he was in Puerto Rico and, booking for them. And I'd had discussions with him about coming over there. And I just was doing other things. And not long after that, he passed, and it really shocked me. I mean, it just really did. It hurt. It hurt to this day. And funny thing is that, Kerry Von Erich was a good friend of mine, and he passed the same day as Eddie, 2 years apart. So around February the 18th of every year, I feel, a little sad. Getting a couple of days before it and then up to that day, That
was there was one of those magazines they had on there. It was Kerry Von Erich and Andre the Giant, who passed literally just lived within a month of each other, and I still have it to this day. It says Heaven Must Have Needed a Main Event, which was a pretty, I don't know why, but that stayed with me. No matter how many times I've moved since then, I keep that magazine with me because it's like, that's pretty touching. I like that, so I'm keeping it. Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, I got to ask you a little bit. We won't keep you too much longer, but I got to ask you a little bit about that special building that was the Sportatorium. That just is, you're talking to a guy who grew up in New Jersey, and I ran home every day to watch Global Wrestling from the Sportatorium, which came from Dallas, and I lived in the shadow of Giant Stadium. We don't like Dallas too much where we're from, but
I know.
But we don't hate Dallas. I think I get along with everybody except as long as we're not rooting for the Cowboys that day. But absolutely, it was just a huge part, and it wasn't just me who would run home to watch it. If I went to a friend's house, they'd put it on, and it wasn't just to amuse me. We all were watching it as kids because it was the greatest thing ever to have a 4 o'clock every day wrestling TV show. It just was really cool for us to have, and that Sportatorium, given the world-class history that it had and later USWA and Global, I mean, what was it like working in that territory? And when you went back for the shootout, did you pass by the Weeds parking lot that now...
No, I did not go by Katie's and Industrial just for that particular reason. I didn't want to see that. I want to remember Sportatorium like it was. I saw a picture recently on the internet. Somebody posted one. It looked like it burnt. They posted the outside of it, and it was run down. And before
what had happened is after
they torn it down.
Yeah, they had Mexican wrestling right before then.
Yeah, I knew.
And that went out, and then apparently homeless people were living in there, and they managed to finally trigger a fire.
Yeah, I knew that. When I left Dallas, was early 99, came back home to live in Kentucky to be close to my kids again. Their mother and I divorced in 1984.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's when I moved to Nashville. And, I had missed so much of my children's life growing up. I would spend summers with them and Christmas, Thanksgiving, things like that. But I missed a few. They would come down to Dallas and spend the whole summer with me. But, that's not a good thing to be away from your kids for that long.
No.
So I moved back, and by that time, by 99, I can remember, when I'd go to downtown Dallas, I would drive down and see the Sportatorium, and it was already being run down. It wasn't being taken care of. That was a building that you had to take care of it and maintain it because it was so old. And, if you're not, it's like a house. If nobody's living in it, it's going to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to do it quickly, first the outside and then, of course, other things. So that was always sad to me. I had figured that it was too valuable a piece of property not to tear it down, and the way that it was going, that they probably would.
And at that point, I think they were running, Crockett had tried to run something there for a few years, and then I think at that point in 99, there was another Continental, not the one from Alabama, but apparently guys who ran, as John Mantell put it, booby bars. Guys who ran strip clubs used to run shows out of there, and their bouncers were the champions. So it was kind of not really what it used to be.
Yeah, there was a lot of promotions that came in there, and I didn't do those promotions. If you didn't have TV, what was the use of doing it? That was my thought. And I would wrestle. I would wrestle independent shows and do shows. And you could stay busy in Texas by doing that. But, I would also realize that, you had to live by a certain lifestyle. And by that time, I was used to the lifestyle that I was living, so it had to be more.
Right.
And I was working, and running a health club was one job that I did and was pretty successful at that. And, I didn't want to leave that job unless I could go and make a lot of money working as a wrestler. And by that time, Vince and WCW were the only two places. And, I talked to the WWF when Terry Garvin, the original Terry Garvin or Terry Joel, was there. And we'd had some talks about possibly coming in for them, but they wanted to replace my old partner. And they threw some names around to me, and I wasn't really thrilled about what they were telling me, because I knew at that time, you have to remember, they had behemoths. They didn't have small guys.
Right, yeah.
And I didn't see I didn't see a place for myself to really get over. And, maybe that was the worst mistake in my career. I don't know. I mean, hindsight's 20/20. I made a lot of mistakes in my life, my friend.
Well, I don't want to leave you on that note, but I did get a kick out of, and I told you, I listened to several of your interviews. You mentioned them previously on Blog Talk, and I checked them out because I do my research. And yeah, I really got a kick out of hearing you and John Mantell talking about filling up your DVRs when they started airing ESPN Classics of Global Wrestling Federation. I mean, I got to tell you, as a 31 last year-old guy, I had already gone out and bought every single thing that anybody bootlegged onto DVD of Global that I could find, just to try to relive some of that great stuff that I remember so fondly after school. And when they started airing it, it was just like my heaven. They aired ridiculous amounts, like 12 hours in a row and things like that. And I sat and watched them all. It was just the greatest thing ever.
Thanks, man. I didn't watch them. I'd DVR'd them, and then I'd fast forward through them so that, I didn't have to watch the whole shows. I just watched particular matches of people I knew would be a good match, and then my matches. And if I liked that particular show, then I'd save it. And I think I've got like 40 of them saved, and I hope to convert them over to DVR. But I just haven't done it yet,
Absolutely. Well, when did you leave Global? When was your departure? Were you there when they were no longer on ESPN and were syndicated, or did you call it a day at that point?
I left Global right around the time of the Bundy match, I'm guessing.
Oh, so you didn't, okay. Any reason why?
Maybe right after that, I'm not sure. Pardon?
Any reason why? Was that like the landmark, this has gone to crap, or is that just what sticks out?
Well, I just particularly felt that the direction that they were going in, I knew they were in trouble with ESPN. ESPN was complaining about the production show, and the audiences were getting smaller. ESPN wasn't going to renew the contract. It was going to be running out real soon. So I just decided to call it a day and do something else, you know.
Very cool. Well, yeah, they ran local shows up until September of '94, but I think it was almost a year, if not over a year, where they just were on syndicated things. And back then, there was a lot of upstart sports networks, so if you were lucky enough to be up at 2 in the morning and flicking through the channels, chances are you'd accidentally happen across it. And I did a couple of times, but it certainly was not as convenient as 4 o'clock in the afternoon every weekday.
Right. It didn't have a viewing audience as, you know, the other ones did. A lot of those shows were, well, I don't know. I shouldn't judge, but I don't think they were put together quite as well as the beginning of Global. You know, I could be wrong. I don't know.
We talked to Craig Johnson a few years ago, John Horton, and
yeah,
he said the exact same thing to me. He said, you know, it just didn't, even though he left in, April or so of '92, he basically said the later episodes when he goes back and watches them just didn't have the same attitude. It was just a show. There was no attitude. There was no, this is a viable contender. It just was a show. And I
thought that Craig Johnson, John Horton, you know, or Craig Johnson, a.k.a. John Horton, or the other way around, actually, added a lot to the show. He was a great announcer. He called it like not only a journalist, you know, he covered other sports, too, like rugby or I can't remember which one it was, but he also called it like a fan, you know. He liked wrestling. It kind of reminded me of Ross, you know, JR. And I thought he did a great job. You know, I like Doyle King. I like his voice. I'm still friends with Doyle. I'm not going to say that
he didn't have the same material to call, though, and that's you got to look at what he had to call.
That's a big point that I was just getting ready to say.
Yeah,
he didn't have the same thing to call. You're right.
Exactly.
There
a
was
lot
some
of people
talent
have bashed
left
him
when he was there. You know, there was.
I've stuck up for Doyle many a time on wrestling, you know, debates, and they're like, oh, he was horrible. I'm like, he was fine. He was the host of the show. He was in command of the show. He just had a pretty, oftentimes crummy product to try and shine, and that was the problem.
Right. And, you know, some of the angles they were running were just crazy, you know. I mean, Gary Hart was booking there for a while, and Gary and I, you know, had history, and he wanted me to go out and wrestle with Rod in a match.
You got drugged, right? You got drugged.
Right. And he and I went back and forth over this for like an hour. I said, man, this is crazy, you know, on ESPN, you're going to carry me out on a stretcher, tell them that, you know, I'm hurt very bad and my eyes are rolled back in my head and my kids are going to see this. You know, I'm going to have to call them and tell them that I'm fine, that it was all just a big TV thing, and I never really smartened my kids up. None of us did back then, you know. It was still kayfabe.
Right.
And finally I just said, fine, Gary. But I knew that I wasn't happy, you know, and like I said,
as a credit to you, I was watching that literally while my kid was doing homework one night because it was on like 9 o'clock at night, and that was on one of the repeats on the ESPN Classic, and my kid looked up and said, what happened to that guy? What's wrong with him? His eyes are rolling back in his head. So even 20 years later, it still was making people go, even if you weren't happy doing it, it still got people's attention.
Yeah, but I didn't think that he followed it up fine. We did some stuff, you know.
What did you think of Rod Price, out of curiosity? Because I thought he was a great worker.
I love him. We're still great friends. We still talk on the phone. We're still FB friends. We love to rib each other. He was he's kind of like me in the ring. Is we worked a little stiff, you know. Yeah. And when he and I worked, it was a controlled fight almost. we worked, okay?
Yeah.
Like I worked with Kerry or Kev or any of the old world-class guys. But, I mean, it was, you know, like Chris Adams, he was a controlled fight.
Right.
I mean, when he threw that super kick, he could take your face off if you weren't careful and know how to protect yourself or your stomach. But Rod and I beat each other half to death, and I thought that the matches that we had against each other, whether it was tag team or singles matches, were great matches.
Tag titles from him in Global with Chaz against John Tatum and Rod Price. You took the tag titles from him. In fact, that was the last appearance that John Horton, Craig Johnson, circling back there, was part of. Your interview with him was his last, you know, swan song for the company.
Yeah, it was, and I really, really hated that was his last night. I've watched that several times, and, you know, Bruce Pritchard, I don't think was real happy about him leaving, and maybe gave him a little bit of guff there. On that particular tape.
He was brutal on him, man. He was brutal.
But, you know, John had to do what was best for him and for his career, and I understand that totally.
Yep.
I don't fault him in any way because I've done the same thing in my wrestling career.
And it wasn't that long after. It seems like it, but it wasn't all that long after that you had left there either. It was within a year, so.
Yeah, it was.
Well,
you know, you start seeing when things aren't doing what they were or drawing the people that they were, and when your major TV sponsor who's giving you national publicity, you know, goes all over, is not happy with the product, and that kind of tells you, you know, writing's on the wall here.
Exactly, yeah.
And I had a lot of other offers to, you know, wrestle, and some I chose to do, some I chose not to, you know.
Cool.
Went over and worked for FMW in Japan, and
very cool.
Really enjoyed my time there. That was kind of
way ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was really, I guess, what ECW was based on, you know.
Exactly. No, they admit as much. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'll never forget the time over there. I was booked with Sabu and Mike Awesome, you know, great guys. There was another guy, Big Rick. They called him Titan from Canada.
Yeah, he ended up being the fake Razor Ramon in the WWF.
Yes. And, you know, another brother that's fallen and passed, you know, guy I thought had just bukus of talent. If I was booking, I would have probably tried to use him in a really good spot because he could do incredible things.
Who's that?
You know, for a man his size, he would stand on the ring apron, jump up, and hit the top rope and jump off the top rope. I mean, not in the middle of the ring ropes, okay?
Yeah.
And stand in the middle of the ring ropes and then bounce and hit you with a clothesline or an elbow or other things. I mean, it was ahead of his time for a big man like that. You know, Undertaker or Mark would walk the ring ropes with you from the corner, but he didn't do that type thing.
Right. Are we talking about Titan or Mike Awesome here?
Mike Awesome.
Mike Awesome,
yeah.
Absolutely. I want to let you go in just a minute. I got one final question for you, but Mike Awesome story is a very cool story. I called him, and I don't know why this stuck with me for so long. When I had him to do an interview, I called him, and he was taking a bath, and I don't know why, but that just amused me to think about this guy who was in an exploding pool death match, sitting in a bubble bath. It just amused me.
Well, he was probably soaking his body from being sore. You know, Sabu walked around like the walking wounded, and I've kidded him for years and still do, you know, about having rubber bones because he'd wake up, it hurts so bad. We'd go to the gym, and he'd try and work out, and it'd be, and then he'd go to the ring that night and freaking tope people to the floor. One of the only guys I've ever wrestled that tried to give me a tope and flew 5 feet over my head and 3 rows deep into the crowd and took a whole section of people out, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. No, Mike Awesome was a great talent, and I was able to tell him. Yeah, it was unfortunately not all that long before he took himself, but I told him how great of a worker he was, and you know, it's one of those things. I don't know these people. Realistically, I don't even know you, but there was people like himself and a guy who worked in WCW named Chris Canyon and a bunch of other guys who later took their lives, and it's like, you know, I talk to these people, and I almost feel like I should have been able to convince them, hey.
Hey, man, there's nothing, if somebody's going to do that, I don't think that you can convince them to do anything else. You know, I saw it with Chris Von Erich, Kerry Von Erich. Kerry came to see me the day before he committed suicide, and I had no idea that he was going to do that. I knew something was wrong, you know, because I knew what his situation was and all, but I don't want to get into that, you know.
Exactly, yeah, that was, I think Doyle King summed it up. We talked about that, and his exact response was just, damn cocaine. Damn
well,
cocaine.
It just wasn't that, you know. He was really distraught about his failed marriage, and there was a lot of things in there, you know.
Yeah, it wasn't just one thing then, okay.
No, it wasn't. And, like, again, I don't want to get into anything about my friends or anything like that. I have nothing but good things, and I still, you know, remember carrying my prayers as I do Eddie and all of my fallen brothers, so.
Yep.
Well, my friend, I don't want to take up any more of your time. It's
well,
getting
my
late
last
here.
question for you is, for your fans who might be hearing this, who haven't heard those Blog Talk interviews with you, what have you been up to lately, and how is Terry Sims in the year 2014?
Terry Sims getting old, but I'm doing a Blog Talk show. Just started it, as a matter of fact, on the 18th and of this month, and I'm real excited about that. It's called World Domination with Terry Sims. You can go to Facebook page. There's a Facebook page for it. I'm sure that the people that, you know, watch the wrestling boards will see that at some point. And I'm retired, and I'm happy. I'm living a good life. I'm just beat up. You know, I've had a lot of surgeries. I've had 6 knee surgeries, 2 shoulder. I've had neck fusion, where I've had 3 discs fused in my neck. I've got back problems. Like I said, I'm a 51-year-old guy, but I'm living in an 89-year-old guy's body, it seems like. But other than that, you know, things are great. I couldn't be happier as far as my personal life, or, you know, I've got a home that I live in, it's paid for, and I've got a car that's paid for, so, you know, don't owe anything to anyone, so, you know, I'm living a good life. I'm happy.
Oh,
hey, this is Mike Awesome, and you better listen to the interactive interview, or I'll come out of your computer and body slam your ass.
This is Missy Hyatt, and you're listening to the interactive interview.
All right, everybody, we're back. Hope everybody enjoyed the interview. Gosh, I really love listening to that. That was just a lot of fun for me. Always was a big Terry Sims fan, and as Patrick knows, anybody related to Global I'm always interested in speaking to, because it was just such an interesting, different promotion to anything you'd seen. The attempt at a weekday, not even weekly.
Well, daily, almost daily.
Yeah.
Monday through Friday, right?
Exactly. The attempt at that is just so amazing to me. And, you know, that fizzled after about a year. They started to just run a bunch of best of shows and only one real one per week. But the concept of having a daily wrestling show with unique matches on each show was very, very cool.
Yeah, that is a very interesting idea. I mean, it's obvious that it's easy to be a captain hindsight and say why it didn't work. It was like, well, I mean, it must be impossible to fill a daily wrestling show content and keep everything fresh. But again, it must have been really cool to come up from school every day and just watch a wrestling show.
It was, and you know what? It was. There was some great stuff on there, and there was some really good talent. A lot of the guys that worked that territory were from World Class and were from, local guys, but especially in the early days, they were bringing in a lot of grade A talent who ultimately ended up being something special in wrestling. And Raven was there, Buff Bagwell, the Patriot. Ironically, Buff Bagwell and the Patriot teamed up in WCW and were tag champs. But a lot of people don't remember that, by the way. I don't know how, but an entire run by the Patriot in WCW is completely forgotten by everybody. Anyway. Yeah,
it's weird how certain guys get forgotten and certain things get forgotten. It's like Scott Steiner, you'd think the only thing he ever did was have a bad match with Triple H.
And it's such a shame because his WCW stuff, especially later years, WCW stuff is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Anyway, WrestleMania season, 2 weeks from tonight.
Yeah, and they're not really doing a whole lot for WrestleMania 30. Really, I mean, looking at what we have so far, the only thing that really interests me was their plan B for the main event. And some people believe that WWE planned this all along and that they deliberately did what they did with the Royal Rumble to eventually work Bryan into that spot. It was all planned, and they tanked the Rumble on purpose, and they knew the fans were going to react to Bautista that way or whatever. I don't believe that at all.
No.
I think that this was just a plan B. So
it just speaks to our first segment. The fans said, this sucks, change it. It's like Beavis and Butthead. This sucks, change it.
Yeah, exactly. And thank God they did, because it's really the only piece of interesting anything that's going on at this year's WrestleMania. It's the hope that Daniel Bryan can defeat Triple H and win the title. I think it's safe to say he's going to beat Triple H. We all agree that that's going to happen. Whether or not he walks out with the belt, I can see them giving the belt to Bautista and having Bryan win it the next month, because they did the same thing with Rock at WrestleMania 2000, but it's, our old buddy Eric had a great line, is it the road to Backlash or is it the road to WrestleMania?
Exactly.
I mean, WrestleMania is the bigger show. That's the one where you want to create all the great moments and highlights. And actually, they did it to Dolph Ziggler last year, where they should have had him cash in his Money in the Bank at WrestleMania and get the big highlight out of it. But they did it on Raw the next night, and here we are a year later, and nobody remembers it.
No, and it got a huge pop that night, and it's popular, but it's different. It's different. WrestleMania is the show that people will go back either on the network or on DVD or whatever and watch again. Whereas a Raw, you pretty much watch and you're done with it. And
yeah, unless something truly spectacular happens.
Absolutely. So that's kind of my take on it, is that we need to go somewhere with the storylines in the next 2 weeks to really build it up, because right now we got basically a schmoz match, which is the Andre the Giant Tribute Battle Royal. I love the statue. The statue's awesome, but the idea behind the match is basically we have nothing for 30 different guys on our roster. What are we going to do? Throw them in a Battle Royal.
It would be completely fine if the rest of the card was filled out.
Yeah, it would, but it just feels like they're
kind of like the gimmick Battle Royal at 17, or even the Battle Royal at 4, or the one at 2. It's like, look, they had pretty full. Yeah, they had pretty full cards, so having Battle Royals in that situation was fine. Even when they did the Miss WrestleMania Battle Royal, I was completely fine with that match until they, screwed it up.
Which one? Oh, yeah, was that a few years ago when 25,
yeah.
I think it was?
Uh-huh.
Well, that was just
And they didn't announce which girls they got?
No, it was more important to have Kid Rock come out and sing a song he could have played at WrestleMania 15.
Mm-hmm.
It made a lot more sense.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was the problem, is that a lot of the girls did not get proper introductions. So because of that, and because time had passed, some of them didn't look exactly the same, so you weren't sure. They're like, hey, is that Terry Runnels? Kind of looks like her, but she looks a little different and things like that. So I don't know. You need to do the introductions.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you do, file them down, you still got to announce who the hell they are. You don't necessarily have to do the whole, Titantron entrance music video shit to all of it. You could just
right.
Yeah, have them walk.
Oh, again, Mania 17, they did it right.
There you go.
They just announced who they were. They got a quick entrance, and they just they followed them all out there, pretty quickly, but they managed to get their introductions in.
17 was a great pay-per-view. I don't consider it the greatest of all time. A lot of people do, but I think it was a darn good one.
Oh, it's the top 5. Easy. My top 5 are 3, 7, 14, 17, and 19.
Most people would not agree with you on 7.
No, but that's a nostalgia pick for me.
Nostalgia pick? Why? Is that your first one?
No, but it was my favorite one when I was a kid.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so that was kind of the one that I kind of latched onto as a kid. And you know what? I mean, that Warrior Savage match was pretty sweet.
That Warrior Savage match was awesome, and
I liked the blindfold match, and it was the Undertaker's WrestleMania debut.
Hogan won the title, but it wasn't as. I don't know. I never bought Slaughter, so that was kind of a problem.
You never bought into Slaughter?
Not as the heel. I don't know why, but it just as a babyface I did. As the heel, I just didn't really buy him as like this. Let me put it this way: I didn't think he could beat Hogan. Part of the thing
well, at that point, it was very hard to come up with somebody that could believably beat Hogan. I mean, the fact that they fell into Undertaker for Survivor Series that year was miraculous. But you're right. I mean, nobody really thought Slaughter was going to win that match. But as a character, I thought he was great.
Well, there you go. And they tried to do it. I mean, obviously, Slaughter beat Warrior, who had beat Hogan. So logically, it was like, okay, well, maybe he is a contender. But it just didn't seem like everybody. Like you look at Hogan's opponents at WrestleMania. It's like King Kong Bundy. Okay, this guy is huge. It's going to be hard to have Hogan beat him with hurt ribs against an animal like that in a cage. Andre the Giant speaks for itself. The Battle Royal. I mean, the tournament. He didn't even win the tournament. Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, and then Slaughter. It's like, I don't know. Slaughter just seemed like it was kind of a
step down.
A step down, and that's not to insult Sergeant Slaughter. I think he's incredible, but it was, I don't know. He didn't seem like he was ready for that spot.
It was cool that Slaughter did get a belt. He's one of those guys that was so recognizable and so cool that it is cool that he did get a world title run out of it. But, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I personally didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I had a problem with it. It just seemed to me like I wasn't. I distinctly remember WrestleMania 6 being, sitting on my top step, sobbing my eyes out because Hogan had lost a Warrior, and leading into that, having the people at school saying, "Oh well," half of them saying, "Oh well, Warrior is going to win," and half of them saying, "Hogan will find a way," and all this stuff. And and then this one, it's kind of like, yeah, Hogan's going to win this match. It's not really much.
Yeah.
I don't see any logical way that he doesn't. So.
And it wasn't like Austin at 14, where we all knew Austin was going to win, but it was his first time, so it was special.
Yeah, it had to happen. I mean, that had to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And even that.
But yeah, we really care about WrestleMania 30, don't we?
We're talking about the.
Well, okay, I have to ask this then. We talked about the Battle Royal. We talked about Triple H and Bryan in the main event, which is honestly great plan B on their part, because had they gone ahead with Bautista and Orton, it would have been the worst WrestleMania main event ever. There's no doubt in my mind.
I mean, nobody would care because there's no feud there. I mean, there really isn't much of that anybody cares about anyway.
No, oh God, they would have shit on it like crazy. I mean, that would have topped, in my opinion, that would have topped Goldberg and Lesnar. I'm just completely shitting all over a main event match for WrestleMania.
That was bad because the crowd really didn't care. I mean...
Yeah. Well, they knew Lesnar was leaving, and they knew Goldberg was leaving, so their whole attitude was like, what, fuck these guys.
Yeah, Lesnar thinks he's too good for this, and this other guy thinks he's worth more money than he's worth. So they're both assholes. Screw them both. That's essentially
exactly. But speaking of Lesnar, I have to ask you, do you care at all about Undertaker and Lesnar?
That's another thing they got to really build a storyline around in the next 2 weeks, because right now I don't.
There's nothing. And again, you touched up on it with Hogan and Slaughter. I do not believe that Lesnar is going to end the streak. Like, not at all. There's not a hint of doubt in my mind that Lesnar's going to end the streak. It's not going to happen. He's a part-timer. He lost to Triple H last year. If he didn't go over Triple H at WrestleMania, he's sure as hell not going over Taker with the streak on the line. It's just not going to happen. And another thing that they fucked up, Undertaker already chokeslammed him through a table, so he basically, what I've been saying is like, all right, he might as well just whip his dick out and just beat him with it. Because it's like, okay, it's like, well, Lesnar's this unstoppable monster that can dethrone the Undertaker. It's like, I'm pretty sure Undertaker just beat the shit out of him on Raw. So, okay, who's the unstoppable monster?
The problem with it as well is that, like you said, Lesnar is being used so much like a part-time talent, which I guess is what he is, to where his win over the Big Show at the Royal Rumble doesn't really get remembered because he's not been around since then.
And he's beaten Big Show 100 times, so who cares?
Well, but Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker fought 100 times.
But they had a Hell in a Cell match.
Right. They fought 100 times. They had a lot of time. It was more than just one match.
Yeah, okay, all you people that signed up for the WWE Network, I can tell you which pay-per-views. No Mercy 2002, Unforgiven 2002, No Mercy 2003, and I think there may have been one more. I'm not sure, but those three for sure. And
wasn't
if
there
they
a
ever
Survivor
release,
Series match too?
I don't think so. No.
I don't think.
The Survivor Series match was Lesnar and Big Show, but yeah, I mean it's there. And of course they wrestled in tag matches. They wrestled in a triple threat match on SmackDown with Big Show thrown in. I remember that. So they wrestled each other on SmackDown and shit too. So I'm not chomping at the bits waiting to see this match because I've already seen it. I'm good. They had two fall programs.
But they're
good.
12 years older and slower, so.
Of course.
Think about that, so that'll make it better.
Absolutely.
There you go.
There's just no drama here. And really, the only matches they can do with Taker at Mania that I would be interested in, to be perfectly honest, I think if they establish Bray Wyatt and do a good job with him, I think that would be a good Undertaker WrestleMania match. I think a match with Cena would work because Cena's the one guy that I could honestly see them letting him end the streak. So there would actually be legitimate drama there. And, of course, the match with Sting. And that's just because it's a dream match and everybody would want to see it. I don't think the match would be very good at this point because both guys are too old, but it would still be worth... Exactly. It would be worth doing just for the video packages and the promos because I think they'd be amazing.
Right, and think of how much they can promote the network with that.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, dude. Yeah, I mean, really, that's where there's rumors we're going to get a Divas title match. Most likely it's going to be Brie Bella against AJ Lee, and that's kind of a thrown-together match, really.
Yeah.
What else we got?
They already did Shield and Wyatt, and Bray's going to be working with John Cena, so I'm looking at that match, and it's fine, I guess, but Bray, if I were booking it, Bray goes over. I don't see the point in having Cena go over at this point.
Well, Cena's not, well, I guess he won in last year's WrestleMania, but prior to that, he's lost at WrestleManias.
Yeah.
He lost to Rock, he lost to The Miz. I mean, he's lost a lot of WrestleMania matches.
Yeah, but, he's already like a 13-time fucking champion, so if Cena wins, if Cena wins, it's, yay, Cena wins again, hooray.
Yeah, but if Bray Wyatt wins, it's kind of surprising.
Yeah, if Bray Wyatt wins, you've just established a new main event heel, which they're going to need post-WrestleMania, especially if Bryan wins the title.
There you go.
So
I got to tell you, and you said this before, it's a little concerning that the WrestleMania card, a lot of the drive towards it is surrounding the legends and what's going to happen with the legends. I got to believe that somebody from the Hall of Fame or Roddy Piper or something like that's going to come out during that 30-man battle royal. That's a surprise.
Oh, I'm sure they're going to put some legends in there.
Yeah, just to kind of give it some kind of something special. But yeah, it's really concerning. It looks good. I mean, it's going to be the main event, especially if Bryan's in it and should happen to win. It's going to be a hell of a moment. But there's potential there, but there's also some stuff that it's kind of like, this was kind of half-assed.
Yeah. The tag division, which was getting really good, really got derailed when the Outlaws won the tag titles. I don't know how you feel about that, but it felt like they won the tag titles and everything just fell to shit with the tag division, and now it's just like, I think it's going to be, I read somewhere it's going to be
a 6-man.
The Usos versus the Real Americans versus Ryback and Curtis Axel for the tag titles at Mania.
That is
what?
Because they pulled Curtis Axel and Ryback out of the 30-man battle royal. So.
What? And that's, Jesus, that's random as fuck.
There you go. Well, what can I do? I mean, there's some really weird matches here, but it's WrestleMania. You've already got a sold-out crowd. You really don't have to sell it on a card anymore. It's basically sold on the spectacle. I'm just concerned they got to do the right things in the main events. And if they don't, then there could be a mutiny on our hands.
Oh, yeah, well, eventually people, with Daniel Bryan, eventually people are going to get to a point where they're going to stop caring. And it's just, I mean, if they don't do the right thing at WrestleMania, then we're in trouble. Because eventually people are going to turn off.
It's going to be like, this shit, he can't get it done, and that's it. Or, shit, they're never going to, well, that's what they should think, but instead what they're going to think is, shit, they're never going to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well.
And, yeah, absolutely, Daniel Bryan. And, the funny thing is, you look at WrestleManias, every 10 years they give it to the wrestling guy. Like, at 10, they gave it to Brett. At 20, they gave it to the retconned Wolverine, who we're not supposed to remember. And at 30, they gave it to they may give it to Daniel Bryan. So that's an interesting, every 10 years.
Yeah, that's weird. I never even would have thought of that. Very cool. All right, guys. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed our WrestleMania talk. I hope everybody enjoyed our Terry Garvin Sims interview. We'll be back in a few weeks with another special guest. Trying to work out a couple of special things here. And I will bring those up to date and up to speed with everybody on the Facebook page and on the WrestlingEpicenter.com actual website. For those who don't know, we actually have a website, WrestlingEpicenter.com. We've been up there a lot longer than our Facebook page, so please go on there and check out the newsline. Buy something on the store. We really could use the money. And check us out here. Our archives of interviews are on there as well, and you can hear everybody we've had on the show. I think you're going to enjoy that. So, Patrick, as always, thank you so much.
No problem.
We ran out of time here tonight, but we'll try and get on either before WrestleMania or right after it and tell you our thoughts on that. If not, Patrick is doing his video blogs, and you can check those out in the editorials section of our website.
Yes, I am. I'm also doing, for those of you interested, not only am I doing wrestling stuff, I've also been posting my top 30 favorite WrestleMania matches, the finale of which is coming this week.
Oh.
And, what?
I said, that's going to be good.
Yeah, we're almost done, and it's a pretty good list because I picked my favorites, and I'm a very smart guy like that. So, and for those weirdos out there that like Godzilla movies, I've been reviewing all the Godzilla movies as well in preparation for the new movie coming out in May. So, if you're a kaiju fan, you can check those out too.
Very cool. All right, man. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Pat, and I'll be talking to you on Facebook. Have a good night, everybody, and thanks again for listening to the Interactive Wrestling Radio.